The Ruger Super Blackhawk, let's check it out. Guys, in the 1950s, Westerns became the rage. And unfortunately for Colt, they stopped making single-action revolvers before World War II. Ruger picked up the mantle and in 1955 started producing the Blackhawk. And it was a hugely popular firearm. Started in .357 Magnum, but then a lot of different calibers followed suit. Smith & Wesson had just introduced the Model 29, the first .44 Magnum, in 1956. And then Ruger, within a year, had produced the single-action Super Blackhawk in .44 Magnum. Rumor has it that some Ruger employees found some .44 Magnum brass in a dumpster and developed the .44 Magnum from that. But regardless, it was a pretty amazing feat that Ruger could come up with a .44 Magnum revolver in such a short time. And it has been extremely popular. There's a lot of big bore calibers that are out there, but with .44 Magnum being one of the top rounds, it really surpasses a lot, mainly because of not only ammo availability at your local gun shop, but also a huge amount of different type loads. And two, you can shoot .44 specials in here to make it really mild. But with the Super Blackhawk, you can really up your game. In fact, there are loading manuals that have specs for Ruger Super Blackhawk only. It's a super strong action. Now, my first experience with a Ruger Super Blackhawk was over 40 years ago. It was my brother's first handgun purchase. And I'll tell you what, guys, I fell in love with it then. Been looking for one for a while, found this at a local gun show this past weekend for actually a pretty good price, so I couldn't pass it up. The original hand cannon. This is a large firearm, and it needs to be. They're super strong. They have a reputation for just being solid. Taking about any type .44 Magnum that you can hand load, even beyond buffalo bore, different type, really specialty ammos. I mean, these are excellent firearms to take for hunting. In fact, you can even take an elephant if you get the right shot toward the head. They've been used for hunting, for a sidearm. A lot of them have scope mounts that are built in, and then of course you just have your iron sights, which are fully adjustable in the back. And then we have a large front blade, and it has serrations on the front. Beautiful bluing, guys. I mean, these are old school bluing. This is probably an older model, but it's still a new model. Now, the difference between the new model, you have two pins. The 3-screw model was the one before this one. It did not have the transfer bar, and then they had the original model, which is called the flat top. And the flat top actually had a very flat sight here. It was a little bit more exposed. And so this has gone through 3 different changes. This does come in a stainless steel and this blue steel finish. Let's go ahead and make sure the gun's unloaded. We're going to open up our loading gate, which is on the side, and we can just rotate the cylinder. And it's empty. Now, with the old Colts, to rotate the cylinder, you had to bring the pistol back to half cock, which is also true for the original 2 Blackhawks. The new model was changed. It makes it a little more safer. And so that way, I don't have to bring it to half cock. I can just open it, and then I can just load my rounds one at a time. These are very slow. They're single action and really taken from designs from the 1800s and the old Colt single action pistols. There are some things about this that actually surpass the Colt pistols, and yet there are some things about this that are not true to the original Western type guns. Typically, if you're doing cowboy action shooting, this is not necessarily the model that you're going to take, and in 44 Magnum it's kind of tough. But it does take 44 Specials, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. One of the things also about the Blackhawk, the Super Blackhawk, is it has a square here at the back, which to me can cause some problems when you're shooting really hot loads. It's a little bit sharp, it's not rounded off. Now we have a Blackhawk, and this is in 45 Colt. I love this firearm. I mean, it's just excellent revolver. Also, we'll just go ahead and double check. This one actually comes with a 45 ACP cylinder, but you can see that they're fluted. On the Super Blackhawk, they're just smooth. This gives just more strength to the cylinder. Plus, it allows you to tell what's the difference. Also, with the Blackhawk, it has an aluminum alloy frame. So this area, this section at the bottom, is an aluminum alloy, and it has black on it. This one has an all steel frame, and it's a little bit larger than the Blackhawk. Just to give you more of a man's grip on this revolver when you're firing it, especially with full house loads. But this came out first in 357 Magnum with the Blackhawk, but it was only 2 years later that they introduced the Super Blackhawk. Now Ruger already designed their single six, and we've done a review on that one. In fact, I have one of the old 3 screws. Very similar in action to the Colt. One of the big things too that Ruger surpassed with the Colt is they took away the leaf spring design in the back to a coil spring, which it's just longer lasting. And so really Bill Ruger said that that would make the Blackhawk superior. But if you are a old Western cowboy aficionado, the old Wild West, the Colt is more true to the original. And the Super Blackhawk really brings modern designs into modern age. And I'll tell you what, guys, single action revolvers, I mean, they're still very popular. In fact, these are fairly difficult to get because the demand is high. And it takes a little more workmanship and craftsmanship to design these and to put these together than your polymer striker fire pistols, but not as much as your double action, single action revolvers. Now this is bringing back the hammer, single action. The only way to fire it, there's no movement to the trigger. It just trips the sear. So we bring the hammer back to fire, and then we fire the pistol. And then for the next shot, you pull the hammer back. So it's definitely a slow type shooting. Now guys have gotten really fast with shooting single action pistols, but this really kind of takes and slows things down. I mean, guys, I love the new polymer frame striker fire pistols. I mean, they're just incredibly ergonomic, and there's a lot of things about it that I just love. And for self-defense, that's what I carry. But there's something about going back to these old revolvers that just, it slows things down a bit, really kind of brings back the joy of marksmanship and just shooting. And when you get into these big bores like this 44 Magnum, you know, it is a handful. And they do make this again in the 454 Casull and also the 480 Ruger. But there are a number of these big bore calibers that have come out because people just enjoy shooting. Now for me, you get up to 500 Smith & Wesson and even 454 Casull, and I won't say that it's a joy to shoot, but there's something about the power behind it. To me, 44 Magnum is that really sweet spot. I mean, it's a full, solid, recoiling firearm. I mean, when you fire it, especially with hot loads, this is about what I like. And anything above that, it gets a little bit uncomfortable. Now this does have, again, the rosewood grips. I mean, they're beautiful. One of the things too that I like about the grips in this slick back is when you're firing it, it actually rides better. It doesn't rub on your hand like putting on some rubberized grips. But honestly, if you're going to shoot quite a few loads through this, putting on rubberized grips really makes a big difference with the palm of your hand mainly. I mean, it just shoots a little bit softer. It absorbs a lot of the recoil. And you'll notice this little piece right here comes down and protects the back of that trigger guard. And that's probably what I like the best. These are old Pachmayr grips. Actually, when I bought this pistol, it came with it. And I purchased the rosewood grips to go on here because I just love the look. But Hogue also makes some that have actually finger grooves, but I'm not even sure that these are still available. Now the hammer has also been enlarged over the standard Blackhawk, and there's really nice serrations to be able to thumb cock the pistol. It does have a 2-click, which the 3-screw had a 3-click. It had the half cock, and then it had a click, and then a click. There's something about that that's just really satisfying. But even with this 2-click, I mean, it just has that really nice sound to it. But what you'll notice is right here is your transfer bar. Original Ruger Blackhawks and single 6s and Super Blackhawks did not have that transfer bar. So that meant it was not safe to carry 6 rounds in the chamber. In fact, the old Colts, it's not safe to carry 6 rounds. You carry 5. And you had their hammer resting on an empty chamber. But here, you'll notice that bar coming up. And this bar blocks the action from the hammer to the firing pin. And so as you drop it, it'll drop down and you're able to fire the pistol. So even if you drop it straight on the hammer, it's not going to go off. So carrying 6 rounds in modern Ruger revolvers is perfectly safe. And that's one thing that, had been a bane. In fact, some people actually had a lawsuit against Ruger at the time. And if you have a 3-screw model, you can send it back to Ruger and they will retrofit it. Just make sure you keep the old parts because it makes the revolver actually more valuable. Now again, you load right here, and again, you can freely spin that cylinder. But when you're unloading, right here is your ejector rod. And so we just line it up, and then you can see the rod, it just comes popping out. And this will push out your spent brass. And there is a housing that fits over it. And then once you load them in one at a time, I mean, it's really simple to do, but it's slow. It's slow loading because it is single action. But just 1 round at a time just goes in there in that little cavity, and then you're ready to go. It only moves one way though. If you try to go the other way, if you miss it once, goes a little bit too far, then you've got to go all the way around. But that's just one thing with messing with these. I mean, they're slow, but man, there's just something about it. And I love that sound, like that sound. I love that sound. And when you pull the trigger, I love that sound. So this is visual and audible. I mean, it's just very pleasing. Now right here is your cylinder pin. And so you push this little detent and you can pull that pin out. And so this pin comes all the way out, and then you can open up your loading gate and then remove your cylinder. And so that way, I mean, you could actually load it that way, but slip it back in, allows for cleaning and keeping up with it, and then bring it in, and then line up with your pin and then push it through. You don't have to push the detent to get that pin to close. Then you just close your loading gate. Now you're ready to fire, cock the hammer, and then pull the trigger. Now one thing about this one, it does have serrations here on the front. I have some Blackhawks that have just a smooth trigger. And honestly, I like a little bit of those serrations just to give me a little bit of grip and a purchase on that trigger. Now here's 9mm compared to the 44 Magnum, and it is quite a bit of difference. So 115 grain compared to, and it goes a number of different grains. This one's a 240 grain, so it's a pretty large bullet. It's actually double, a little over double what the 9mm is, and the velocities are all over the place because there's so many different type loads. You can take any game in North America and most of the game in Africa because of the power of the 44 Magnum. But one thing that's kind of unique about 44, very similar to 38 Special, is they have a shorter round that shoots 44 Special. And this is softer, more like about a 45 Colt in a standard load. And so, you're going to the range and you want to just kind of take it easy and enjoy it, you can bring out your 44 Specials and then bring out your 44 Magnum for more serious work. Or if you just like to shoot that full power, you've got it right here. One thing too about the Super Blackhawk is they can take hotter loads than any lever action 44 Magnum on the market and any double single action revolver on the market. These are the boss. They're the strongest. In fact, when 454 Casull came out, which was really powerful, they were using a single action design really close to the Super Blackhawk. And the weight on the Super Blackhawk, 3 pounds, 0.2 ounces. That's heavy. The single action revolvers typically have a very good trigger pull. So we pull our hammer back. Of course, obviously you've got it pre-cocked. Man, that is a nice crisp break. And we'll take our Lyman trigger gauge for Brownells. 1 pound, 8.3 ounces. 1 pound, 13.1 ounces. I mean, it's light. The thing about a single action revolver though is you have to pull the hammer back before you pull that trigger. Well, we have some Winchester 240 grain. This is 44 Remington Magnum. This is for deer and black bear. We also have some 44 specials, and this is Federal. These are just lead, hollow points, softer to shoot. We'll probably start out with those. Finding 44 ammunition right now is difficult. You know, I mean, I did find it, but there's not a lot out there. So to load this bad boy, just open up the loading gate, and again, it'll free float. And so we're gonna go ahead and start out with the specials. And guys, while this is, you know, slower to load, it's very satisfying. And see there, if I go a little bit past it, I've got to get it. So you want to make sure you get it right in that right spot. And then we'll go back and find it. Not a big deal. These 44 special loads though are pretty soft. The 44 Magnums, that's going to be a lot of fun. Woo, baby. That's a big difference between 44 Special and 44 Magnum. The Super Blackhawk, I mean, it's a large piece of steel. And especially with that 7.5 inch barrel, can't imagine the 10.5 inch. We've got some full Magnum loads in here. We're just gonna shoot them. I have switched to the rubber grips, just to give you a little feedback between the rubber and the wood. We've been shooting it with wood grips first. But that little place at the trigger guard that comes straight down, if you're not careful, it'll wear on your finger. I have to bring my hand back and intentionally keep it away from there. But, I mean, it's got some recoil. But honestly, if you just let it ride, I mean, it's not really that difficult to shoot. I'll be honest with you guys, I think that the wood grips actually allow your hand to move with the wood. The rubber just tends to bind down, so it puts more force into your hand. We're going to shoot some 44 Specials once we get it unloaded. Of course it is, again guys, it's just slow to load. But it's just one of those, just the world of firearms. I mean, it just makes things different. But yeah, just one shell at a time. And then you only have 6 rounds. And two, if you miss that cylinder like I just did, it's got to come back around, but it's okay. Freely spins, nice satisfying sound. Hit that loading gate, just close it. That's like shooting a 22 after you shoot the 44 Magnum. I mean, it is super light recoil. Again, a heavy gun. But man, the balance of this thing and the power. There's just something about 44 Magnum and a Super Blackhawk. And one gun to me that competes really heavily with the 44 Magnum as far as carrying it for self-defense in bear country. A 10 millimeter really compares very well with it, you know, but it also is more toward the 357 Magnum. I would think the 44 Magnum is going to give you a little more capability in some aspects, but it's just 6 rounds and slow to load. With this Glock Model 20, it's a 15+1, and that gives you a lot. Plus, it weighs a heck of a lot less, about half the weight. And so, to me, you know, for when we're hunting, this is one of the guns I carry. I carry 10 millimeter because it's just a performer, and again, you've got a lot of rounds. But with the Blackhawk, you know, there's times where I do like to carry my 45 Long Colt Blackhawk just because I like the Blackhawk. So, you know, it's a matter of just effectiveness or just a matter of personal preference. Now, the retail price on the Ruger Super Blackhawk is $1,049, and that price has gone up over the past few years pretty extensively. A lot of it has to do with the hand fitting. The parts are just really well done. Of course, cold hammer forged barrel, the carbon steel. I mean, it's just a very well-made firearm, and it takes time to produce these. I purchased this at a gun show for a lot less than that, but it was used. And it was actually a really good deal. But you know, you can typically find these around the $800 to $900 range. It's according to where you're looking. So what are the reasons to buy a Super Blackhawk? Well, if you're hunting, that's definitely one reason, especially if you're handgun hunting. You know, if you're carrying this into the woods as a sidearm, you know, you may want to go with a 5.5-inch barrel. I personally just like that 7.5-inch barrel. It's very balanced. The 10-inch barrel or 10.5-inch barrel, it's long and it has its potential, but you know, you just have to decide if that fits your needs. Definitely for hunting is great. Also, if you just like the big bore and you want something in 44 Magnum, this makes an excellent range companion, and it really delivers. I mean, again, you can load up whatever you can pretty much dream up to a certain extent and fire these, and they're just super strong actions. Of course, the nostalgia of a single action revolver is definitely part of it, and you know, having that power behind it. And you know, guys, honestly, if you just like a single action, you know, pulling out this Blackhawk, I mean, it's a strong action as well. It's just that they beefed up the Super Blackhawk with that steel frame. But these have held up very well. In fact, these will take loads that other firearms with the same calibers just can't handle. If you want double single action, you know, you have your Smith & Wesson Model 29, and you also have your Ruger Super Redhawks. But those are big and beefy, but you know, they are double single action, and you know, and that's also an excellent hunting companion as well. So guys, if you want to get into the big bore game, the Ruger Super Blackhawk is one of those that's just simple, yet it's super strong. And with 44 Magnum, there are so many different choices of ammunition. But of course, you can get the 4.54 Casull in Super Blackhawk and the 480 Ruger. So it does give you some other options. But for me, 44 Magnum, I love it. I mean, it is a powerhouse, but yet it's just got that old school type quality. Feel a little bit like White Earp when I pick this thing up. And the one thing about 44 Magnum is you gotta have the moxie. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America, long live the Republic.
Teeny tiny move back. Teeny tiny. There you go. Oh, too much. There you go. There you go. Perfect.
It was really, and so I couldn't. Of course, you know, your loading gate, it's really solid. Well, and I wanted to bring it to you guys, reminisce a little bit.